I was 19 years old, the age of unshakable belief in my own immortality. It was October 1994, and I lived in a strange dichotomy. Mornings were dedicated to marketing, the mandatory academic routine. Nights were dedicated to literature and the noisy chaos of independent rock. I hated having to wait one more year for the night classes. Nighttime meant time to work, time to earn a living. The college was far away. The walk back was my laboratory. Those long minutes on foot allowed me to observe the human mosaic of the city. I was a voyeuristic spectator. I wrote about the city, and the city was my refuge. My greatest professional credential at that point was being the manager of a video rental store. Back then, the manager was the curator, the guardian of the films. It was our analog streaming service. My bus stop had no mystery. It was on the avenue, the big avenue that connected the campus to the rest of the world. The so-called avenue law was clear. All buses, no matter the name, number, or color, converged there and were required to go all the way to the end, where I would catch the subway. That predictability was my shield. I always took the first one that came. On that Tuesday, the heat was oppressive. The marketing class had been exhausting. My mind was boiling with the need for escape. The ritual began. I put in my headphones, inserted a CD. The battery, damn battery. It was almost dead. A dying battery didn't just fade the music out, it distorted it. The voice, already deep and powerful, sounded demonic, scratched, a lullaby for hell. The first bus arrived. Perfect. It was like all the others. It was the Avenue Law. I got in, climbed aboard, hoping the Discman batteries would last through the trip. I pulled a book from my backpack, my antidote to reality. I couldn't wait to find a seat and lose myself in its pages. The bus was abnormally, sickeningly silent. Not the silence that precedes sleep, but a heavy silence, full of expectation. It felt like everyone there was standing vigil. No laughter, just the monotonous, guttural vibration of the engine and a harvest of stares I tried to ignore. I expected 25, maybe 30 minutes of travel, enough to read 10, 15 pages. But the reading wouldn't flow. I felt those eyes on my back. They were like needles that kept me from sinking into the pages. I tried to ignore it, blaming my student paranoia. Maybe it was the t-shirt, maybe the book cover. The bus had barely moved when I felt a touch. It wasn't casual, it was a poke, sharp, certain. The hand of the woman sitting beside me. My throat went dry. The air grew heavier. Those weren't mere curious looks. They were looks of judgment, of warning, of knowing. I pulled out one earbud. The demonic music became a distant buzz. "You're not going to Setealen, are you?" Her voice was hoarse, an urgent whisper. "Sorry," I replied. "Santarem, is that what you said?" I answered with the first similar-sounding word that came to mind. She shook her head, impatient. "No, I said Setealen. This bus is going to Setealen. You'd better get off." I now noticed, with growing panic, that the silence wasn't just a lack of conversation. It was a tension. Everyone on the bus was looking at me. "Yeah, go on. Get off, kid. Get off, now," insisted a man holding a briefcase, his tone aggressive. Before I could form a logical question, the decision was made by a higher authority, the fare collector. "You're getting off!" The bus stopped immediately. This wasn't a bus stop. It was the middle of some random block. But I didn't care. I got up quickly. I felt like I was in a corridor of glaring eyes. Was I the only miscalculation there? The only one who didn't belong? The only one who shouldn't go to whatever this Setealen was? I ran toward the open door, dignity thrown aside. I just needed to escape that cocoon of eyes. The vehicle growled and pulled away. And what caught my attention again was that the bus turned into a street no bus route ever turned into. In fact, it was impossible for a bus to turn there, too narrow for a vehicle that size. I stood there, silent, a mental fog and an inexplicable event. For the first time, the avenue law had been broken right before my eyes. Predictability dissolved, and by turning onto that street, the bus took my peace with it. I had never heard that name, but now it was stuck to me like an oil stain or a destiny. I stayed standing on that asphalt far too long. The city, once my laboratory, now felt hostile. That bus wasn't just a vehicle. It felt like an anomaly that had burst through the bubble of my reality. The first thing I did was the most logical. I tried to decipher the enigma of that name. Setealen. Maybe an unknown neighborhood, a new slum, a slang term? I used the street guide from that time, that paper brick where my index finger played the role of a little car across the map. No neighbor, colleague, or urban geography professor had ever heard the name. It was as if the word were a collective typo, a syllable that didn't belong to the city's lexicon.
The name began to consume me. My routine, once a refuge, became a trap. I no longer walked quickly to the bus stop. I was afraid of which bus would arrive, afraid of what the sign might suddenly announce. I started going straight to the subway. It was farther away, but I was avoiding the avenue. The absence of Setealen on any map was more terrifying than its presence. The bus and its silent passengers were ghosts only I had seen. I was isolated in my own truth. The rotten cherry on top came one night. Weeks later, sleep that once brought rest became something I could only confirm was a dream when I woke in the morning, exhausted, as if I had been awake all night. I began dreaming of Setealen. It started once a month without fail. I saw myself there, wherever there was. It wasn't a normal place. It looked like a poorly made replica of my own city, more worn, older. The houses weren't abandoned. They were blind, hollow shells without life, almost like prisons sealing in their own hauntings. And the people always had their backs turned. In one of the dreams, I tried talking to a man sweeping the sidewalk. He stopped. The sound of the broom ceased. He just tightened his grip on the broom handle and turned, not toward me, to the side, keeping the back of his head facing me. He whispered in the same hoarse voice as the woman on the bus, "You should have stayed there." And I woke up. Sometimes in the dreams, I ran. The panic was absolute because even knowing it was a dream, the sensation that it was real was overwhelming. The peak of tension came when I started noticing the coincidence in their clothes. The heavy coats, the briefcase. They were the same people from the bus. They didn't see me. They ignored me. They were part of the macabre furniture of that place. I was asleep and awake in Setealen. A few months passed, and I was about to accept that it had been a stress-induced hallucination brought on by the dying Discman battery, until I found my journal. I always wrote down my impressions and ideas. The day after the incident, I had written in frenzied, almost illegible handwriting the full account of the bus. And at the bottom of the page, a detail fear had filtered out and erased from my memory. A final note, almost an urgent addendum. The bus turned and went down the hill. I noticed the license plate was unusual. It didn't have the standard letter sequence, just 3 numbers, 777, and beneath them, a word printed like a faded sticker, passage. That changed everything. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a record. The 777 passage plate was the key. Fear gave way to desperate courage. I needed to know. Why did they want me off? Was it because I wasn't ready to go? I decided I would go back to the stop. This time, I would wait for bus 77.
For days, I submitted myself to torture. I sat at the stop with my book, eyes fixed on the avenue. The sun scorched, the rain bothered. Nights were short. The cycle of nightmares sped up. Now I dreamed almost every night. At dusk on a Friday, the air smelled like rain, but it didn't fall. I was ready to give up when I saw it. Far away, poorly lit. Not a vivid color, a dull gray, almost invisible in the dust of traffic. And as it approached, my heart jumped sharply in my chest. I could read beneath the dirt the 3 numbers and the word 777 passage. With my heart in my throat, I didn't think. I ran to the curb and waved. The bus stopped with the same dry sound. The door opened. The fare collector was the same. He looked at me, not with surprise, but with sinister resignation. There was no anger, only the confirmation of inevitability. Again? Knew you'd come back. I boarded. There was no one else. The bus was empty. Where is Setealen? Who are you? I asked. The collector didn't answer. He only pointed to the turnstile, covered by a dirty cloth. No need to pay. You already have a place. I sat in the same seat, window. The bus began to move. It didn't follow the avenue. The driver turned to the right. The cobblestone descent. The acceleration was sudden. The urban landscape outside began to distort. It was no longer the city. The streetlights blurred, the engine's growl intensified, and the gray asphalt gave way to a starless darkness. I looked out the window. There was only a thick fog and the silhouettes of the blind buildings from my dreams. The bus braked, not with the dry screech from before, but with a slow drag, like metal on sand. The door opened. The smell of burnt diesel was replaced by the odor of old, damp, moldy earth. The collector approached. You insist on going down the street, but the path was always up the hill. He gestured toward the street. We've arrived. Setealen. I stepped off. This time I wasn't expelled. I was invited. The bus left immediately, but it didn't turn. It simply dissolved into the gray fog. Was I in Setealen? The blind houses, the sepulchral silence. A few meters away, a group of people, heavy coats, briefcases. They weren't facing away, they were turned sideways. But now they turned their heads slowly and in unison. The woman from beside me, the man with the briefcase, the woman from the aisle, all the passengers. But they weren't looking at me with judgment. They were looking at something past me. The man I had seen sweeping the street in my dream approached. He handed me a thick stack of paper. It was the bundle of crumpled notes I had seen with the collector that first day. You have a job now. He didn't give me time to react. He turned and rejoined the group. All of them were now looking in the same direction, the steep cobblestone hill. I followed their gaze. Up there, coming slowly from somewhere beyond, it appeared. The gray bus, 777 passage. It stopped at the top of the hill. The door opened. And there, standing on the step, was a young man of about 19, holding a worn-out book, staring at the street with panic and confusion. The collector inside the bus shouted, "You're getting off!" The boy jumped out onto the street, and the moment his feet touched the ground of Setealen, all of them, all my former colleagues from the bus, slowly turned their backs to me.
silently. I stood there in the middle of the street. I looked at my hand, at the bundle of crumpled notes. I squinted, and the thick, dirty paper revealed itself to be a handful of old tickets. I raised my head and saw the boy on the asphalt watching the bus depart. He was at the beginning and I was at the end. The boy began walking, confused, toward my old place. I walked to the corner, looked to the side opposite the new boy, and I woke up. Another dream as real as life. That's when I knew that next month, when bus 777 arrived again, my voice would be the next to join the chorus. You're not going to Setealen, are you? Before you go, tell me something. If you ever stepped onto a bus, a road, or a place that shouldn't exist, if you ever felt those silent eyes on your back, or heard a voice whispering a warning meant only for you, then don't leave this video without leaving your mark. Comment below what you think really happened on that 777 passage route. Hit the like button so more people can find their way into these hidden stories. And if you want to keep traveling with me through the cracks between our world and whatever waits on the other side, subscribe to the channel and stay close. If you have a personal encounter, something you can't explain, something that followed you, you can share it through the email in the description. Your identity will be kept completely confidential. Some roads choose us. Some stories need to be told.